Listen to AM 560 The Answer online at 560theanswer.com, on the AM 560 mobile app, on your Alexa-powered smart speaker, and on TuneIn, iHeart, and on Odyssey. This is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson on AM 560 The Answer.
Everybody, and everybody clap your hands. We lambda, 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 and make a move. And we've come here on stage tonight to do a show for you. We got a rockin' rhythm and a high-tech sound that'll make you move your body down to the ground. We got Poindexter on the violin, and Lewis and Gilbert will be joining in. We got Booger Presley on the mean guitar, and a rap by little old me, Lamar. We got Takashi beating on his gong. The boys and the moves are clapping along. And just when you thought you seen it all, along comes a lambda 4-foot tall. So worms will come on out here on the floor, so we can work our bodies like never before. Break.
Good morning. Timothy Busfield on the electric violin as Poindexter. Brilliant.
I watched that movie recently. It's worth it. It doesn't lose its humor over the years.
Well,
and it was shot at University of Arizona.
We're about to be joined by somebody who inexplicably is an alpha beta man.
Oh,
he's
really?
Not down with the lambdans. Will Reilly is associate professor at poli-sci at Kentucky State University and author of Hate Crime Hoax: How the Left is Selling a Fake Race War. Will, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Yeah, beefing the show.
You're really pushing for a revenge of the alpha betas against the lambdas of the world after they fought so hard, did the lambdas to get to chair the Greek Council.
Well, that was kind of a joke. Neither of those was my house in college. But I wrote an article. But I wrote an article for National Review called "We Need a Revenge of the Jocks," just making fun of the kind of theater kid takeover of society. And it was inspired by. Have you seen the video of Justin? Yeah, where in the beginning, the thing about it is that there's two components. Like in the beginning, he's running for student body president of Bowdoin, and he's this really put together, like preppy black dude. He's wearing a dove gray Brooks Brothers suit. It's actually a suit I have, and he's like saying things like, "We need to bring together everyone from the Bone College Republicans with the Maine preppy pronunciation to the Bone College Republicans. The goal is the radical middle," and in the end, he's screaming in this Malcolm X preacher suit, like, "Sunday always comes." And I talk about how we've seen this move toward the fake radical throughout society, where the diversity coordinator for the American Friends Council was recently revealed to have been pretending to be an Arab American for something like 17 years. She's actually a white woman named Rachel Seidel, but she's parlayed this fake identity into a series of 7-figure jobs. There's this idea in society, 22% of young people now say they're gay, or at least LGBTQIA plus minus, etc. There's this idea that everyone's got to be unique, beyond the normal, so on down the line. And often ideas of being almost antisocial, very different, neurodivergence, a common term on dating profiles, tie into that. And I say that we need kind of a return to normalcy. I don't think 22% of people are gay or 56% of people are insane. So, yeah, that sort of basic Greek letter, go get a job, mundane reality, I'm calling for a return to a lot of it.
No, I certainly get that. Right. The irony of everybody trying to be unique is that you end up just being a facsimile of each other. You end up accomplishing the exact opposite, right? Getting a different tattoo than your friend who got a tattoo doesn't make you unique. It just makes you somebody who's also defiling themselves.
Yeah, and obviously, for men and women or women, tattoos aren't all defilement and so on. But it's like the end of SLC Punk, right, where the guy starts dating a normal, successful woman, and she's like, well, you're not fighting the norms. You're one of the most popular people in the punk scene. You're a punk. You look like a punk. Every one of your friends looks like a punk. And you suddenly realize that, like, there's nothing especially, my like, high school tribe was raver. Like, there's nothing especially unique about defying authority if you're with 100,000 other people that are defying authority, literally in a warehouse full of them.
Well,
so
I was just saying, when becoming gay is not enough, now they pushing trans on people to be like who can out unique somebody else.
Well, and it goes beyond that. I mean, like the gender identities, if you go on Tinder now, I think there's 68 available gender options, and some of them are almost funny. Like, I think in a previous appearance on this show, I discussed demisexuality.
What's that?
Well, demisexuality is a situation where you won't have sex with someone that you're not romantically attracted to. And I'm not making this up, a common proxy for romantic attraction is that you've gone on 2 or 3 successful dates. And I mean, I've explained this to female friends of mine, and they were just like, well, that's everybody. That's just being Catholic or not, quote unquote, slutty. Like, so, I mean, you can now take almost anything and present this as a sort of unique gender or personal identity. And that it's very tempting to do that. It's very tempting not just to be a well-adjusted, kind of heterosexual, middle-class white woman from Cleveland, I think. So, I'm kind of defending the well-adjusted, heterosexual, middle-class people from Cleveland.
It's about time about time somebody did. Yeah. Well, I mean, part of this is so it stems from, we've discussed this before, but it stems from this idea that when racism doesn't exist, it'll be invented because there's a demand for it from the left because there are benefits to pretending that America is 1960 Selma. And so it goes with these other identitarian plays. So it's not it's more complicated than just saying there's a benefit to casting yourself as a victim. There's also a benefit of casting yourself as part of the vanguard for these quote unquote marginalized communities. And we need an ever expanding list of marginalized communities for everybody to, participate as a savior.
Well, yeah, that's part of the theme of the piece, that the total population of people that can define themselves as somehow outside of the norm keeps expanding. So, I mean, the traditional civil rights movement in the USA, you don't want to be glib, it was sort of blacks and maybe Jews. And then, I mean, that expanded through feminism, which, of course, in the beginning had some arguments for it. But then you got the gay rights movement. Now you have the trans rights movement. Now you have the multiple gender identities. Now you're discussing neurodivergence. So you really do have a phenomenon where the probable majority of people in the United States, you very frequently see statistics like 1 in 3 people is disabled. And that's true only if you're counting things like, inability to balance checkbooks, like ADHD, which is legitimately is the inability to focus consistently. But, I mean, where the large majority of people could put themselves in some kind of group that has a serious problem that keeps it outside of the norm. And I guess what I'm saying is that when you're talking about 200% of the people in society, you're no longer talking about oppression in the old sense. And by the way, like, I'm a black business person. Black people don't face oppression in the old sense. Nobody does. But if everyone is kind of going for that throne, you're going to have this constant sort of oppression Olympics. And I mean, like, looking at the stats right now, trans people seem to be outperforming, blacks and pretty much everyone else. So I think that's why there's so much competition around that category. But, I don't think that trying to find new ways to be worse off is a productive thing for a society.
Well, and to the point too that you're making, the data seems to back it up, which is that while the actual instance of racism is declining, the perception of race relations is correspondingly, well, actually inversely, you would think, also declining. So racism is going down, but people think racism is getting worse.
Well, Dan, this is actually one of the things I research professionally. So, I mean, this isn't just a personal opinion. I mean, that's very much the case. Since the mid-1960s, racism has declined about 94%. I mean, you can measure that. Like, if you're taking a standard perception of racism, like, how likely are you to marry or consider a marriage to someone of a different core racial population, black, Asian, white. The percentage of people willing to do that's gone from 4% to, I believe, 96%. So racism's declined dramatically, but media coverage of racism has increased about 2,000%. If you look at reports on racism, or just uses of the word racism in the Trib, the Times, the Journal, so on down the line. So, and that's had a measurable effect. Like, there are annual Gallup and Pew questions in the surveys about how people rate race relations, and the percentage of people rating them good since 2000, since that kind of Jordan and Byrd era, has dropped from 70%, I believe that was among both blacks and whites, to like 30% of blacks and 40% of whites. So there's a really significant effect of all this kind of poison that we're seeing from the media day in and day out.
And so what is the cri de coeur? Is it to not pay attention to what the media says? Is it to get involved and push back on CRT and identity politics at the K through 12 or even collegiate level? What's the cultural response that's required?
Well, to some extent, I think we have to kind of talk back. I mean, you and I are both in the media and live in big cities. I mean, you guys are still in Chicago. I live in downtown Louisville and might move back to Chicago. So, I mean, I don't really sympathize when people say, well, like, I'm going to get off the grid and go live in the woods. I mean, this sort of stuff, like turn that stuff off. I think that people need to some extent, create alternative institutions, but also just to engage within those that exist, from social functions to conversations like this one. And I think that an advantage, even though we're probably in the minority, is just very often knowing actual facts. I'm sure this is true on the furthest fringe of the right, too, but a lot of things that are believed on kind of the polite center left are just nonsensical.
Yeah.
Which gives you an edge. I mean, you keep seeing these just bizarre facts, like the average person who is very politically liberal believes that between 1,000 and 10,000 unarmed black men are shot by the police annually. So, I mean, that was the Skeptic Research Center in 2021. They find that every year. And, I mean, this just crosses genres. Like, I mean, among upper-middle-class white women, the average person thinks 10% of the population died of COVID.
Right.
So if you have any idea of the real facts, very often you can dramatically change what people think. And I think that's especially true in this arena of race relations, where so much of the news is really good. I mean, just a comment on like this terrible story where the black young man was shot through the door. Stuff like that is very frequently presented as evidence of this epidemic of violence by white people against black people. If you just pull up the annual crime numbers, like violent interracial crime between blacks and whites is about 3% of crime on an annual basis. It's very, very small on both sides. And it's about 80 to 90% black on white. So if you illustrate to someone what these figures are and just show them the data, which isn't questioned, the entire narrative changes, and there's no way to get around that.
He is Will Reilly, Associate Professor of Poli-Sci at Kentucky State University, author of Hate Crime Hoax, How the Left is Selling a Fake Race War. Will Reilly, thanks as always for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. Have a good one.
Thanks, you too. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
This is Chicago's Morning Answer.
Your show keeps me alive during the week. There's nobody I'd rather listen to between 5 and 9 in the morning than you guys.
On AM 560, The Answer.
Building owners, property managers, and chief engineers. This one's for you.